Okay, so I'll just do a brief explanation of the practice and then we'll just do the practice. And a lot of the practice will naturally become clear through repetition. And this is a more retreat style than we normally do. So there's going to be opportunity for question and answer after lunch, but really just kind of get on with it. Just do it and see what happens. Some of it will be clear right away, really straightforward. Some of it will make no sense. Just give it some time, give it some space. The essence of the practice is Guru Yoga. So Guru Yoga is, in this perspective, we're going to do it from a more sutra perspective, is about really connecting with the outer guru and the inner guru being able to collaborate. Yeah, your inner wisdom and whatever outer wisdom there is, being able to hear each other and meet and kind of clear away any obstacles between you. And if you're in a really Guru Yoga mind space, everything can be the teacher. Yeah, so you start with your actual physical human teachers, and then you start seeing all holy objects, statues, scriptures, stupas, thangkas as being one in nature with the teacher. And then you start to see everything as being in one in nature with the teacher, everything collaborating to wake you up. And so this practice is really at its essence Guru Yoga, which is something that we'll be working on our whole lives to try and understand. But I think that there's part of us that already knows what it is to be in the space of the student mindset, which is different than thinking like a blind follower, right? A student mindset assumes that you have wisdom that can be developed. Right? You have wisdom that can be developed and you just need the support of different inner and outer conditions for that development. But you're not thinking of yourself as lower, right? You're just thinking of yourself as this kind of raw material that can be developed into perfection. So Guru Yoga is beautiful, and we're using the method related to Lama Tsongkhapa. So Lama Tsongkhapa was around about the 14th century. And he was also enlightened, just like Shakyamuni Buddha. And he wrote this practice for his teacher, and then his teacher gave it back to him. And it's a really beautiful way to connect with our tradition particularly. But you don't even really need to know who Lama Tsongkhapa is to understand the essence of the teacher. So we're using Lama Tsongkhapa as our main representative of teacherness, or guru-ness, because he's someone that embodied all the qualities that we're trying to develop now. He was an amazing scholar, and he was an amazing practitioner. He was an artist and a logician, and he knew all the ways to help support sentient beings in their practice. But the main thing we think of him is the Lamrim Chenmo. So the great treatise on the stages of the path to enlightenment, this 3 volumes in English text, is one of the most profound texts you'll ever come across because it has all of the teachings of the Buddha put in linear order and put in such a way that you understand how to practice them in sequence and how they relate to one another. So he wasn't the first person to teach Lamrim per se, but he clarified it in such a beautiful way. This text is something incredibly profound. Then he also did the great treatise on the stages of the path of mantra, because just like now, Tantra had become very distorted and mixed and hedonistic and contaminated with worldly things, and he tidied it up, fixed it all up, clarified it, did his research, inner research, outer research, traveled all over the place to get the teachings complete, and then shared them with others. So he really represents what a human can do in a lifetime, what we can do in a lifetime. So we think of him as the representative of teacherness that we are developing internally. So Guru Yoga. And then the other thing that this practice focuses on is the 7-limb prayer, which is in most of your practices. The 7-limb prayer, prostrating, offering, confessing, rejoicing, the 2 requests, and dedication. The 7 limbs is a really quick way to purify the mind and develop merit. Yeah, it's just a really, really efficient way of getting rid of negative karma and developing positive karma. So that's kind of the bulk of the practice. And the way you would do this if you're doing this practice a lot is to focus in on one of the 7 limbs really deeply, and then do the rest of them in an abbreviated way. And then maybe the next day focus on the other limb and do the rest of them in a brief way. So you're really giving depth to the practice gradually and making friends with it over time. So we'll kind of do this during the retreat, where each session will have the same format, but a slightly different emphasis. And some of the sessions we're going to do in English, and some of the sessions we're going to do in Tibetan. And the reason for Tibetan, there are a few reasons. One of them is people have become enlightened on the basis of this practice spoken in the Tibetan language, so we can kind of energetically ride their coattails. Yeah, you're kind of getting into the slipstream of the energy of these practices. It also can move you from your intellectual mind into a more experiential mind. And then the other is that music is nice and makes you happy. Okay, so anyway, so sometimes we're going to do Tibetan chanting, and sometimes we're going to do English reciting, and we'll just alternate. So that's the way the retreat will go. Slightly different emphasis, slightly different style. So for you guys who aren't as used to retreat, just make sure that if you can only hear yourself and no one else, perhaps you're too loud. And good if you can wait for a few syllables before joining in, so that you understand the tune and you understand the pace. Even if it's a tune and a pace that you're familiar with, still give yourself a moment to listen and make sure that you're tuned in. Because also you get the benefit of this really rich group experience of everyone synchronizing. And you'll probably find it's a lot easier to focus and concentrate in a group than it is by yourself at home. But particularly when everyone syncs up, synchronizes, yeah? So it can be really beautiful that way. Okay, so then the last part of the practice that's really beautiful is the part about the 7 wisdoms. And the 7 wisdoms practice is related specifically to Manjushri, the Buddha of wisdom. And Manjushri is known for helping us with our memory and helping us with our wisdom. And I think most of us have some memory issues that we would rather we didn't, yes? And imagine Manjushri's sword cutting through ignorance, also cutting through all the cobwebs in your head. Yeah, all of the unclarity, all of the muddiness, all of the vagueness, all the distraction, everything that prevents us from remembering. And so the 7 wisdoms are to help us develop different kinds of memory and to clear obstacles to memory as well as wisdom. So there's a few different kinds of wisdom that we're focusing on, and each of them help you and help you be of benefit to others. So it's really beautiful that it contains this practice. So we'll also be doing the prayer of Lama Tsongkhapa, which is on the back of this card. So if you want to just have a little peek. So on the back it says 5-line prayer to Lama Tsongkhapa, the Migtsema. So the meaning is Avalokiteshvara, or Chenrezig, great treasure of non-objectifying compassion. Manjushri, or Jamyang, master of stainless wisdom. Vajrapani, destroyer of the entire host of Maras. Sometimes this line is omitted. Yeah, because it's kind of like secret or implicit, because to say destroyer sounds a little bit violent, even though what's being discussed is getting rid of negative states of mind, right? You're getting rid of negative states of mind, no problem with violence, but it can sound a little funny. So we often jump over that line. So if you want to make a little note to yourself, when we're chanting, we'll jump over that line. Then Tsongkhapa, crown jewel of the sages of the land of snow, referring to Lama Tsongkhapa. To Lozang Yönten, at your feet I make requests. Lozang Yönten was his ordination name. Right, so Tsongkhapa, man from the onion land, right? Lama from the onion land, but Lozang Yönten was his ordination name. Okay, so at your feet I make requests. So we'll do this chanting, is a very popular chant in Tibetan Buddhism. There's a slow way, there's a fast way, and then there's a recitation way. So this will keep coming up, this prayer. And during a lot of the meditation sections, you'll be saying this prayer in in the same way that you would say a mantra. So you would be going, mi me se we te chen chen rezig, dream me kempe wampo jempo young, just really straight, not singing. And you just right under your breath. No one should be able to hear you but your own little ear. Okay? So when you're doing any kind of mantra recitation, this or any other kind of retreat, you do want air to come out of your mouth. Just a little bit, like you're just under your breath saying it, because this helps the mantra affect your inner energy system. Yeah, but if you're using a mala, if you're using prayer beads, just be a little aware that the more deeply you go into meditation, the less aware you are of how much noise you make. And you might be interfering with other people's ability to go deeply into meditation because you're clicking. Yes, so be aware of your clicking noises with your prayer beads. If you don't have prayer beads, don't worry about it. Just have it right under your breath and just keep repeating. It will help keep you focused. So in this day and age, there's a lot of people with anxiety and a lot of people with depression. And this particular mantra and the visualization that goes with it is very good for clearing anxiety and depression. Or lung, which is like the inner wind disturbance that Tibetan doctors talk about. So it's quite handy for that. Okay, so are there any questions? Or concerns? Or additions?
What if we don't know the mantra?
Then you go, what is it again? Right? So it might be that in the beginning you just focus on the first line and just try and get the first line and then build in the second line and then build in the third line. So just really gradually, And
big Tibetan secret.
Kale, kale, slowly. Part of what helps you learn is the fact that we chant it together. Yeah, so we'll chant it together slowly, and then we'll chant it together quickly, and then it'll go under our breath. And so it's sort of in your head from having heard it out loud. So that'll help, and we'll do that every session. So you'll be surprised how quickly you learn it. Yeah, it's, you learned Vajrasattva, and that was 100 syllables, right? So you're going to be fine. Right, you're going to be fine. Yes?
I want to ask you, what is the purpose to do it very fast, the mantras?
You don't need to do it very fast. The reason that you want to not do it too slow is that you'll fall asleep. Yeah, if you just kind of like, me, me, say, wait, change. That's what'll happen. So you want to keep it at a pace that's vivid. So wakefulness is so important. We are so vague, right? Our minds are so cloudy. We drift and are distracted so easily. So say it as fast as you can without getting tense or without feeling like you're pushing it. So don't feel like you have to go the same pace as me. I've been saying it for decades, so it just rolls off my tongue, But you have some mantras like that, like Om Mani Padme Hum. You can just say Om Mani Padme Hum, no big deal. But your friend who's never heard it before is like, what did you just say? Om Mani Padme Hum, right? So it just familiarity. So do try and do it at a pace that keeps you awake. Does that make sense? So don't feel like you need to rush it, but also don't just kind of do, because then you'll just go into la la land. Yeah. Okay, yeah. Good question. Any other questions? Shall we just look at the practice before we do the practice, just so you're sort of oriented? Okay, so starting on page 3. It says the preliminary practice, taking refuge in generating bodhicitta, which we just did. If you look in the little part in brackets underneath taking refuge in generating bodhicitta, it says visualize the objects of refuge. You can either do the elaborate visualization of one into many, as found in Jorchu, which is the merit field that was on the altar. Do we still have it somewhere? Where'd it go? Is it still there? Yeah, I thought I saw it. Yeah. Okay, anyway, there's a merit field on the altar, so if you're wondering what that looks like. Or you can do the simple visualization, and everyone breathes a sigh of relief, in which all objects of refuge are embodied in Guru Shakyamuni Buddha. So we know what Shakyamuni Buddha looks like. And if you forget, you can just look there. Yes. So you're not thinking that is just Shakyamuni Buddha. You're thinking that Shakyamuni Buddha embodies all the lineage. That Shakyamuni Buddha is one in nature with all Buddhas, all enlightened beings. Yeah, so that's the visualization when you do refuge. Is that clear? Yeah. And you just do your best, right? If you're not a great visualizer, golden orb, right? That slowly clarifies its details over time. People can become very tight about not being able to visualize, forgetting that you visualize all the time. If you think, where is my car right now? You all know where your car is. Yeah, it's in your mind's eye. Yeah, you have kind of a general idea of the buildings around it, don't you? You know what your color of your car is and what the door handle is. You can even imagine the dashboard and the speedometer and all those things. There's a lot of details. And you can put them into your mind's eye right now, and you're not even sitting with your eyes closed. Why? It's familiar. Yeah, it's familiar. You see it all the time. So don't worry if you can't bring these images to mind just like that. It's just less familiar than the dash of your car. Someday it'll be more familiar than the dash of your car, and that will be quite nice. Okay, so just do your best. Because the most important thing is having the impression the Buddha is here. Yeah, the Buddha is here whether you think about him or not. But by thinking about him, you bring yourself into connection with that energy. Yeah, okay. So then we do page 4, the 4 immeasurable thoughts. Yeah, page 4. So immeasurable equanimity. At the end of that, it says, meditate briefly on Tonglen, taking on all the disturbing emotions of sentient beings and giving them to your self-cherishing thought, thus destroying it. So is anyone here never done Tonglen, giving and taking practice? Yep, couple? Okay. So Tonglen means basically you're developing this mental attitude to voluntarily take on suffering. Yeah, instead of having resistance to suffering, you're voluntarily taking on suffering, not just yours, but that of all sentient beings. But you're not giving it to yourself, you're giving it to your self-cherishing. And your self-cherishing is where all of your suffering came from. So where the suffering came from, you give it back. Yeah, and then you're later going to be offering all your happiness and roots of virtue and merit to all sentient beings, which helps you let go of your attachment and grasping, which also helps you understand emptiness and dependent arising. So this giving and taking practice is mainly to destroy self-cherishing, which is the attitude that sees yourself as primary importance, right? Which thinks that me first is a good idea. Yeah, the one that gets kind of pushy and self-centered and self-conscious, that actually is why we suffer so much. Yeah, if we didn't have self-cherishing, we would have so much less stress and we'd be kinder. Self-cherishing is the source of all your depression. Self-cherishing is the source of all of your neuroses and anxieties and irritation, and yet it feels like it's helping you. Right? It feels like if I don't look after me, who will? Which is true in a way, but self-cherishing makes it a bigger deal than it actually is. Yeah, it exaggerates self-importance. So when you have this idea of giving suffering to it, you're diminishing that very thing that was the troublemaker and freeing up actually more happiness for yourself and others. So it's a mental attitude, and it's just gently start to experiment. There's tons of resources on this practice that you can find free online on Lama Yeshe Wisdom Archive. Lama Zopa Rinpoche explains it really beautifully. But if it doesn't make sense to you and it seems too soon or too weird, just look at the words of the prayer above it, because I'm guessing you can connect with those. Yeah, equanimity, good idea, connect with that. Yeah, and if Tonglen feels like too much, just give it space and come back to it someday when you feel ready. Does that make sense? So then we do immeasurable loving kindness. And this is when we're more offering rather than taking. So on the top of page 5, it has the meditation that goes with that. It says, meditate briefly on Tonglen, transforming your body into a wish-granting jewel that gives every sentient being every kind of temporary and ultimate happiness that they desire and need. Yeah, so the first one was more taking, this one is more giving. And then compassion, again, is more taking. Joyfulness is more giving. So they alternate. So we do the 4 immeasurables, then we do purifying the place, and then we begin the actual practice on page 7. And this is where we have the 7-limb prayer. And this we will have a little bit of music, which some people find musical and some people find not musical. The sound of Tibetan bells is something that might be an acquired taste. When you hear the bell, remember emptiness. Yeah? So if you can, think of it as a beautiful offering of music. But if nothing else, try and remember emptiness when you hear the bell. Because that, again, it helps you not fixate on the prayer itself as being inherently existent. Yeah, it's sort of unhooking you from fundamentalism verse by verse. So you hear a little ding and you go, oh, which is empty? Oh, which is empty? Right? Yeah, so anyway, when you hear me ring the bell, think that. Okay? So it'll be the 7-limb prayer, and then during the 7-limb prayer, some of the verses I'll give more time than others and more guidance than others, and just kind of see if you can go with the flow. Yeah, just see what it's like to go with the flow, because this is a little bit of an advanced practice. And some of you are very familiar and some of you are brand new. And just, keep an open mind, see what happens. Don't feel like you have to force yourself to think anything you're not ready to think. But if it feels like an attitude that might be worth adopting as we read through the prayer, try and adopt that attitude. See what happens. Yeah, just kind of experimental. And then we'll get into the meditation, the main meditation, which is with the Migtsema prayer. And basically the visualization is that you have, up here is, at the very top, is Maitreya, who is the Buddha of loving kindness in Tushita Pure Land. And from his heart comes Lama Tsongkhapa and his 2 disciples, Gyaltsabje and Khedrupje. And you imagine that from their heart centers, 3 beams of light come and join into one and enter the crown of your head, and white light flushes through you, purifying all negativities of body, speech, and mind. So whether you can see specifically Maitreya, Lama Tsongkhapa, tubes of light, yada yada, or not, you're just thinking white light flushing, and keep it in a downward motion. Yeah, so don't just think random white light. Think that from the crown of your head down and through, very similar to Vajrasattva. So that it's a big part of the visualization, and it'll be a more effective meditation if you keep it that direction. Yeah. So it'll start with just white light flowing through, clearing all negativities, and in the beginning, you're just trying to keep it nice and simple, trying to connect with the mantra, and that might be all you can do. And that is still really developing your concentration and helping your energy system. If you are familiar enough to have boredom in your mind, boredom is not a bad sign. It means that you're familiar enough with the practice, you can add more depth to it. So if you find that you have a nice visualization and a nice mantra, and you're also thinking about many, many things, yeah, because you're familiar enough, then add in, what am I purifying? Physically, what have I gotten up to? Verbally, mentally, how do I hurt myself and others? And really imagine that light breaking your habits, kind of interrupting the patterns. Yeah? Just really letting go of your negative activities. And really letting go of any kind of guilt and shame and worry, but just light flooding through you, clearing it out. Yeah. Anything you can remember, but also anything that is similar to what you remember that you've done from beginningless time. Does that make sense? And then later we're going to go into then connecting with realizations. And that main visualization is orange light for the 7 wisdoms. And I'll describe some specific things that go in the orange light for each of the wisdoms. Just do your best. Keep an open mind. See what happens. Okay? So that's what we'll do. And then some nice dedications. And done. Okay? So are there any other questions before we take just a quick break to make sure everyone has the text? Yeah, but other questions besides that? Yeah, we'll have a break so everyone can get on the same track. Beseder? Okay. All right. So now get yourself organized. And if you're already organized, give yourself a 5-minute break. Okay.